April 27, 2009, a bankrupt General Motors sends out a press release. 3 paragraphs. One of them kills Pontiac, the brand that invented the American muscle car. 83 years, gone in an afternoon. This is how GM murdered its own legend. To understand what died that day, you have to understand what Pontiac was. Detroit. A young engineer named John DeLorean, yes, that DeLorean, bolts a 389 cubic inch V8 into a mid-size Pontiac Tempest, slaps a name stolen from a Ferrari on the back, and accidentally invents a new category of car. He calls it the GTO. It sells out. By 1968, Pontiac is the 3rd largest car brand in America. The Firebird, the Trans Am, the Bonneville. Pontiac isn't just cars. It's a mood. It's your older brother's jacket, your uncle's driveway, the first thing a teenager wants, and the last thing a banker wants to finance. In a country built on speed, Pontiac owns the word. Then, General Motors decided it wanted to own Pontiac harder. The 1970s break everything: the oil crisis, emissions rules, insurance premiums on muscle cars go vertical, and GM, sitting on 5 separate car brands that all compete with each other, makes a decision that sounds smart in a boardroom and lethal on a dealer lot. They call it platform sharing. You call it badge engineering. Here's the trick. Take one car, put a Chevy grill on it, call it a Malibu. Put a Pontiac grill on the same car, call it a Grand Am. Put an Oldsmobile grill on it, call it a Cutlass. Put a Buick grill on it, call it a Century. Same engine, same transmission, same dashboard, different nameplate, different showroom. GM thought they'd cracked the code. They'd built one car and sold it 4 times. What they'd actually built was the death of their own brand identities. By the mid-1980s, a Pontiac wasn't a Pontiac anymore. It was a Chevrolet wearing an arrowhead. The GSO had been killed off. The Firebird shared a body with the Camaro. The Fiero, Pontiac's big mid-engine sports car bet for the decade, caught fire on the road. GM issued a recall for nearly 250,000 of them. The brand that had sold men a fantasy was now selling them fire-prone commuter cars with mustache-shaped grills. And still, they kept going. Into the 90s. The Grand Am, once a muscle car, becomes one of the most common rental fleet vehicles at American airports. A Pontiac in 1995 is something you rent, something you park at the Hampton Inn, something your aunt drives. The arrowhead didn't stand for performance anymore. It stood for, I had a coupon. And then came the Aztek. GM greenlights a Pontiac crossover designed by committee, tortured by cost-cutting, and launched into a market that wasn't ready for it. The Aztek looks like someone welded 2 different cars together at a bad angle. Within months, it becomes the punchline of the entire auto industry. Pontiac's executives knew it was bad. They launched it anyway. One GM designer would later say, the Aztek wasn't a car. It was a symptom. The symptom of a brand that no longer had permission to make the cars it wanted to make. A few years later, Bob Lutz, GM's car guy vice chairman, tries one last resurrection. He imports a rear-wheel drive Australian sedan, drops a Corvette V8 in it, and sells it as the Pontiac G8. Critics love it. Enthusiasts love it. It is, by every measure, a genuine Pontiac, the first one in 20 years. It goes on sale in early 2008. 6 months later, Lehman Brothers collapses. The American auto industry hits a wall at 80 miles an hour. By December 2008, General Motors, the company that employed 250,000 Americans, the company whose president once said, "What's good for GM is good for America," is begging Congress for a bailout to stay alive. They get it. Tens of billions of dollars in taxpayer money. But the money comes with a condition. Kill the brands that don't make sense anymore. March 2009. Rick Wagoner, GM's CEO of 9 years, is summoned to Washington. The Obama administration's auto task force, led by a financier named Stephen Ratner, gives him the news. Resign, or we won't save your company. He resigns. 5 weeks later, the press release goes out. Pontiac is dead. The last Pontiac, A white G6 sedan, the most forgettable car Pontiac ever made, rolls off the Orion assembly line in Michigan in early 2010. There is no ceremony, no retrospective. The worker who builds it goes home. GM survives. It goes public again that same year in one of the biggest IPOs in American history. Taxpayers eventually eat somewhere around $11 billion in losses on the rescue. But the company lives. Pontiac's dealers don't. Thousands of them are shut down across the country. Family businesses that had sold GTOs and Trans Ams for 3 generations get a letter in the mail. Parts supplies dry up. Service gets handed off to Buick and GMC dealers who never wanted the work. And the cars themselves? Something strange happened to them. The last generation G8. The 2004 GTO revival Lutz snuck out the door. The Solstice. Cars that were ignored when they were new quietly started appreciating. Enthusiasts realized they were the last real Pontiacs ever built. They started buying them up, hoarding them, restoring them. The way you'd buy paintings from a dead artist. Pontiac in 2026 is a ghost with a fan club. Pontiac didn't die because people stopped loving fast cars. And Pontiac died because the people who owned the brand stopped believing it was worth being different. They turned a legend into a parts bin. They turned a logo into a sticker. And by the time they noticed what they'd lost, a bankruptcy judge was already signing the paperwork. Every empire leaves a receipt. This one's a VIN plate. Next case file drops Thursday. Subscribe so you don't miss it.